Menopause is a natural biological process that marks the end of a woman's reproductive years, and the years leading up to it can be quite challenging for many of us women. Today, we will address how nutrition can support us as women during this period, and we'll also address some questions and concerns that you may have as a woman. Welcome to the Help We Need podcast, where we explore topics that empower women and support their well-being. I'm your host, Fumike Moronkeji, and today we're discussing a topic that affects millions of women worldwide. And our topic for today is nutrition for menopausal women in the 21st century. Our special guest is Ms. Sally Al-Awar, and she joins us again. Ms. Sally is a licensed nutritionist with over 20 years of experience in nutrition and dietetics. Thank you, Sally, for joining us today to discuss nutrition for menopausal women. It's so good to have you on our podcast again today.
Thank you, Fumike, for having me again on your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember our first episode together. I think we talked about nutrition and its relationship with stress. And I think it was well liked by our listeners. So I think we did a pretty good job, if you allow me to put it that way. And based on the first episode, there was one thing I took away, Sally, and that was smaller portions. So I'm a big advocate for smaller portions in the house. So thank you for allowing me to learn that new tip or habit. And I think it's really helping a lot.
Well, I'm actually glad to hear that you have implemented these guidelines. And of course, it has impacted your life and those of our listeners. And it's always a pleasure to be with you on your podcast to support women as we all go through this life together.
Absolutely. And I love what you say about, going through life together. And it's so true. And I believe it's so comforting for many of us women, especially on the call today, that we don't go through these changes, especially with menopausal changes, the changes our body undertakes, as we progress. We don't go through these changes alone. So, yeah, absolutely. So, Sally, let's get to the conversation for today. I'm sure our listeners are really keen to listen in again and, check in on what we have to discuss about menopause. So, I'm going to start off with you just sharing your perspective on menopause. I know you're coming from a nutritional angle, but maybe I'm just very curious, how or why does nutrition matter when women are going through menopause?
All right, so let's first start with defining menopause to know for all those listening what is classified to be in the menopausal phase. And it's actually a natural biological process that women will go through when it actually marks the end of their reproductive years. So it typically occurs when a woman undergoes 12 consecutive months without her menstrual cycle. And in this case, this happens due to a reduction in the hormonal changes significantly, they decrease. And here we're talking about estrogen and progesterone. So when these hormones decrease, this will cause hormonal fluctuations. And when they undergo 12 months of no period at all, then this is considered to be menopause. And the thing is that it has a great impact, whether physically or emotionally, on women. And you will see, and we will discuss the importance of nutrition with respect to menopause. Of course, there's a lot of discussions about before, during, after, but generally speaking, the guidelines for nutrition are very important to be implemented because they will really help in managing all the risks and symptoms that women undergo during menopause. So to start with, one of the most common symptoms I would like to talk about is bone health. So with the reduction of estrogen hormone and all these hormonal changes, there is a reduction in bone mass. as this is going to happen naturally. And that's why we encourage women to, from a nutritional perspective, to eat foods that are rich in calcium, and of course, not to forget the presence of vitamin D, because it is definitely a fundamental element to help women, take in their calcium. And here we're talking about, of course, dairy products. Those who don't consume dairy products and they don't consume animal products, they can have fortified plant-based products, of course, leafy vegetables, and the presence of vitamin D, whether we're getting it from sunlight or supplementation, because nowadays there's a lot of prevalence of vitamin D deficiency, so that would be helpful in maintaining a good bone health to prevent osteoporosis. So that's one very important element where nutrition plays a role. The second element is heart health. And not a lot of light is shed on heart health when it comes to menopause. So there are mainly two aspects that are spoken about: osteoporosis and visceral fat or weight gain. But there are also other factors that we need to take into consideration, which is heart health. And due to these hormonal changes, there is a risk of cardiovascular disease happening. And in this case, the nutritional focus would be to include a lot of healthy fats, because we know that all the healthy fats that are rich in omega-3, anti-inflammatory, they all help in reducing the bad cholesterol, improving the good cholesterol, hence improving the overall health outcomes, especially when it comes to heart health. And of course, not to forget to limit saturated fat and trans fats, because we might be eating healthy on one hand, but on the other hand, we're still consuming the bad fats. So it will kind of not help in reducing the risk for cardiovascular diseases. The third and the common one, as I said, is weight management. And weight management, of course, this is one of the most common risk factors, or let's say symptoms, that women actually complain of during menopause. And they complain about the weight mainly accumulating over the visceral area around the midsection or the visceral area. And this is due to the hormonal changes. The fat distribution will change, and this is why we will have that weight gain around the abdominal area. And the way, of course, to manage this nutritionally would be to be following a calorie deficit plan. Again, a well-balanced calorie deficit plan that focuses on, whole grains, balanced amount of fruits, intake of vegetables, healthy fats, good amount of protein, and avoid the saturated fat and the unhealthy fats and refined sugars. So this way, you will help yourself in managing your weight. Of course, with respect to weight changes, we have to be also aware that there is a reduction in basal metabolic rate. And this is a natural process, again, that happens as we age. And of course, it's evident when during the menopause stage. But the importance of eating lean protein to increase and to improve muscle mass, and to make sure that we are avoiding or minimizing, let's say, the muscle loss, because it is a natural process. It will happen. So good eating habits will kind of minimize the loss of muscle mass. Another important symptom to talk about are the hot flashes. So hot flashes, night sweats, a change in mood. Again, they all are due to the fact that women undergo all these hormonal changes. So, I mean, we all experience, let's say, premenstrual symptoms. So, and this is due to hormonal changes. How about if the woman is actually undergoing major hormonal changes? So you can imagine the mood swings, all these symptoms that women undergo. So we advise for women to consume, soy-based products that have like what we call phytoestrogens. And these are found, for example, in flaxseed, legumes, soy products. This way it will mimic estrogen in its, natural form in our body, and it will kind of help and ease the symptoms that women might undergo. Additionally, for example, minimizing or avoiding alcohol, spicy foods, and caffeine has been shown to reduce the hot flashes. So that's why there is a good link when it comes to eating habits and nutritional management with menopause itself. And of course, managing blood sugar levels, because again, with these hormonal changes, women are at a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes because insulin sensitivity is actually affected. And that's why we always focus on complex carbohydrates, low glycemic index foods, avoiding refined sugars. So fundamentally, all these recommendations will all help in managing all the points that we mentioned to ensure overall well-being and to ease the symptoms for women, because it's a lot to handle, but with good lifestyle practices and good nutritional habits, definitely, if there were to be any symptoms, she will feel them, but much, much easier than being too difficult to manage.
Well, that's quite a lot. I mean, you said there's a lot to handle. It's a lot to handle. I mean, with those changes, you've read out a lot of things, or you've mentioned a lot of things. You've talked about the hormones, being triggered. So I think you mentioned estrogen. So obviously, these hormones have a way of impacting our bodies and obviously triggering our response to food as well. So you talked about the impact in terms of our bone health. So we obviously need to be very conscious that we need to eat foods in calcium, healthy in calcium. You've talked about our heart health, because then, cardiovascular diseases. You've talked about the cholesterol levels, so we need to watch our fat intake. And obviously, it goes without saying the most common issues we have as women is the fat
Wait.
that builds around the top, right? We want to look pretty, we want to look nice, but this fat is not going away. So I think knowledge is empowering, because when we know, then at least we understand that it's not exactly any fault of ours, it's our bodies responding to the changes. But I think the fact that knowledge is empowering, then we go a step further, and that's why we have you on our call today. So you help us understand that we can manage the situation if we look closely at what we're eating, so that at least we can reduce the impact that it's having on our bodies. So thank you so much for sharing. And it's helpful to know that if any of our ladies are experiencing this, of course, then now they know what to do. Okay, so I'm just going to jump into the specifics, because I know you talked about nutrition. So we really need to understand what are the key nutrients that we need to really look out for. Women on the call, whether we are getting into that menopausal stage or we're in it, when you say nutrients, so we need to really understand what does that mean.
All right. So, as I said, when we ensure a well balanced, plan, or let's say nutritional habits, and we try to incorporate all the fundamental elements that can help manage our symptoms, and at least from our end, we are doing what is necessary to minimize and to avoid down the line all the risk factors that are accompanied with menopause. We just need to factor or to take into consideration the presence of calcium and vitamin D, in the sense that a sufficient amount of calcium along with vitamin D. And I have to reiterate on one point, is that those women who are usually vitamin D deficient, and of course the common sources like egg yolks, a lot of vitamin D fortified products, it's important. But while going for supplementation, if needed, we need to ensure that the presence of vitamin K2 is part of this supplement, because it helps in allowing the calcium to be deposited in the bones, not in the arteries or the soft tissue. So it's important to also work around our eating habits, and we can actually get K2 from cheese, dairy products, animal products, and even fermented foods. And I think this is very important to highlight that those who are vegetarian, for example, and they don't take dairy products, they can get their K2 from fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi. These are available options. So that's why having a balanced, let's say, or a wide spectrum of healthy food choices will ensure that we are getting our calcium, our vitamin D, and our K2 to ensure that calcium is actually deposited in the bones, not in the arteries. So that's one very important point to highlight. The next one would be omega 3. And we said that, yes, omega 3 is a very important element to be in our diet because it's anti inflammatory, it helps reduce our risk of heart disease. But really, the chronic diseases, apart from menopause, are also arising because of the inflammatory foods that we are consuming, and processed foods, etc. So ensuring a diet that is high in omega-3 or rich in omega-3, like for example, consuming all the healthy fats, avocados, olive oil, raw nuts, that's very important, chia seeds, flax seed, these all play a very important role in adding omega-3 fatty acids to our diet. So, and I think everything is readily accessible. Presence of nuts, olive oil, this is something that we can include, even salmon, a very good source of vitamin D and omega-3. So we can actually include that as part of our plan. Along with that, magnesium. And I think this is also a very important element, or let's say mineral, to be included because it supports in muscle and nerve function. So good sources would be like nuts, seeds, whole grains, legumes, and we hear nowadays a lot about magnesium being part of our daily intake, whether it's to get us to sleep better or to have better muscle function, so on and so forth. So that's why we can get it naturally, and it will help in in our overall health. B vitamins, especially, for example, here we're talking about B6 and B12, two very, very important vitamins that are needed for energy and brain health. Because we said that with mood swings, feeling tired, those especially who go under a lot of night sweats and they wake up with the hot flashes, this will affect their cognitive function the next day. So you need vitamins that will actually kind of reduce the undesired, let's say, symptoms of not having a proper night's sleep due to the hot flashes. Phytoestrogens, as we said, are found in like soy products, lentils, and we said that they mimic estrogen in our body. So that's why it can reduce some of these menopause symptoms. And of course, last but not least, the presence of fiber is definitely very important to be included because one of the other symptoms, although not so common, but I won't say that it's not there, is a change in bowel movement, and constipation could be one of the symptoms. But again, the digestion process itself changes, and gut health is also affected in this phase. So a good fiber intake will reduce the chances of having, constipation or, let's say, irregular bowel movement.
Wow, thank you. That's helpful. So, I mean, to cap on what you've just said, you've talked about a number of nutrients. So, what I can hear is for us women on the call, as we are going into the menopausal period, or maybe we're in it, we would experience issues with our bones. I think you mentioned osteoporosis or something like that. So I guess that has to do with bone, and maybe it's weak, it's brittle or fragile or what have you. So the vitamins are not enough to sustain as it should be. So that's I think that's a red flag. If we're feeling weak and our bones are brittle, that's a red flag. And obviously we need to go to the hospital. But from a nutrition perspective, this is telling. And this calcium and vitamin D is what we can do to enhance it. You've talked about brain health. And I think that's where, interestingly, omega-3 fatty acids, that's helpful to note that sometimes with the brain fog and you can't remember things properly, it's probably there's a deficiency somewhere in terms of our nutrients. And, it's just good to know that if that's a flag, then maybe we need to enhance what we're eating. You've talked about magnesium, so nerve functioning. Wow. And then the vitamin B6, B12 has to do more with brain health as well and giving us energy. So for those
Correct.
of us period and the energy is low, then we need to really, the BC B12 needs to be something that we're focusing on. And you also talked about, I think, is it mood swings and how to alleviate that? I'm not sure which one now. Is it, you mentioned something with estrogens,
Phytoestrogens, yeah,
exactly.
phytoestrogen
And I think last was
was
the
the final.
indigestion. Lot of things that are happening in. And we need to pay attention. And if we eat foods rich in fiber, it helps with the digestion as well.
Correct.
So that's a lot. But thank you so much. And I think one thing I would like to call out is balanced diet, balanced diet. And we can't escape this, it appears. It's even more critical now than ever. We cannot avoid discussing the plates. The nutrition should be balanced. It's really essential for us as women. It's a must have for every woman going through menopause. So thank you so much, Sally, for really zoning in on that. So I'm just going to move on, but it's really close to what you've said because you've talked about balanced diet, but for most of us, whether it's the countries we live or our lifestyles or just the fact that we may not have the nutrients that we really need wherever we are, that um, for me calls to mind the question of supplements. So I would love to hear your take on this. Um, should women be taking nutritional supplements, off the shelf, on the counter? There are a number of supplements. So, what would be your advice for us as women that are listening to our conversation on today's podcast? Should we just go get something from the pharmacy? What's your reaction to this?
Okay, so of course, we always don't prefer, it's always, I always say there are no shortcuts. I mean, supplementation is, as it says, it's a supplement to what we eat. If, for example, whether, this discussion is with the gynecologist or with the dietitian to understand the overall eating habits and trend of what the woman actually eats, it would be then clear on whether supplementation is needed or not. When we talk about supplementation, the common supplement that most doctors are recommending is calcium vitamin D as because of the importance of taking that 1,200 milligrams of calcium per day. And, if the diet is, for example, that person doesn't consume enough dairy and they don't have enough, let's say, calcium fortified products, then that in that sense, supplementation would be necessary because we will need to reach to our minimum level that's required per day. So these two are quite common. And if not satisfied by the diet, then we should be taking calcium vitamin D, and of course, accompanied with K2. Now, when it comes to other supplements that have shown to reduce the symptoms of the night sweats and hot flashes, a common one that doctors some are recommending is evening primrose oil. So it has been shown, some studies have shown that it can help reduce the symptoms, especially the frequency of the night sweats. And another one that I came across was red clover. Again, this has been shown to kind of reduce the symptoms of menopause. But generally speaking, we can say that there is, like, pure solid research to say that yes, this does this and this does that. With some women, it has made a difference. With others, it hasn't. And I always say that it's very important to discuss what you would like to take with your doctor or your gynecologist. So because there are aware of your history, the pattern of your, perimenopause, menopause, etc. So supplementation, or say self-supplementation, I wouldn't recommend at all, although a lot of them are actually over the counter. And again, some of them might help in one way, but might cause other side effects on the other hand. So it's always important to discuss supplementation with the doctor. And when it comes to vitamin D supplementation, also, we cannot take randomly any dosage that we want. It's important to assess which levels we are at. And then based on that, the doctor will recommend what is the amount that we should take. So we can't just take randomly 1,000 per day or 50,000 one tablet per week. We need to have a baseline to start, understanding what's the starting point to know how to supplement based on that. But the others, like, herbs and other supplements, I always recommend to discuss these options with the doctor, because they've experienced and they've seen a lot of patients, and they have got their feedback based on their experience.
Yeah, that's helpful. I'm just as an afterthought, because as a nutritionist, and obviously you're a dietitian, when your clients come to you, I'm trying to understand on what basis do you, I don't know if I should use the word prescribe a meal plan or design a meal plan. Is it just focused on a meal plan, or you just specifically tell them this is, I'm trying to understand the difference between what the doctor does in terms of maybe doing some testing and then advising, women in that going through the menopause period as to what nutrients they need to take, and your role in terms of, having them eat foods that are balanced and nutritious. Could you just clarify that a bit? Because
Okay,
I'm
so
thinking you would say,
how can
oh,
we
go
help?
get, yeah, go
Yeah.
get supplement, get this. So that's, maybe you need to correct that perception for us,
All right.
maybe for me.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so
usually
usually
what
what
we do, based on the daily needs, whether calorie wise or, the content of calcium in the plan that is to be prepared, should be around 1,200 milligrams per day from different food choices, ensuring that there are sources of dairy products, low fat dairy products, green leafy vegetables, apart from, these options, and of course presence of good fats and healthy fats that have a high presence of omega-3. We need to also advise on proper hydration, minimizing caffeine intake, reducing or eliminating alcohol intake as much as possible, because it has been shown to increase the symptoms and the frequency of the hot flashes. And just make sure when we design the plan that fits each and every woman, because every person has a different lifestyle, they have a different routine. We need to combine their preferences, but from our end, to ensure that it's a well balanced plan that has a sufficient amount of calcium, good vitamin D sources, proper hydration, to incorporate exercise, and advise on proper exercise routine that won't cause injury. On the other hand, it will strengthen their bones and their muscles. Especially weight bearing exercises are also highly recommended. So we do our part in preparing the plan to ensure that all the vitamins and minerals and elements are well balanced for their needs. Now, if they can't follow up with the quantities, for example, or they're always, on the go, very busy, they skip some of the calcium-rich food choices that we give them, then here it would be important to discuss this with the doctor, because, as dietitians, we don't prescribe, we advise. And doctors here would come to say that, okay, this is your routine, then you maybe should take this amount of calcium per day, and based on what their vitamin D needs are, uh, to supplement accordingly. But we always ensure that our plan is holistic in all the vitamins, the minerals, and of course the other lifestyle factors, which is ensuring good amount of water intake, reducing his spicy food, good exercise routine, getting enough sleep, lowering stress levels. So this is how we implement it holistically.
Thank you. I think it's helpful to also call this out. So you don't prescribe, you advise, and
Advice.
based on that proper meal plan, and portion the nutrients accordingly. And I think it's helpful to call that out on the podcast, because I know as women, most times we love to chat with each other. We like to compare notes, and okay, if you do that, I'll do this. So I think what I'm hearing you say is your meal planning is tailored to the individual. So
Correct.
as women, to ensure that we're not just comparing notes and my friend took this, I'll take this, they took that. No, we need to make sure that we are getting guidance and, a meal plan that is tailored to our needs, our body type, to our body biology, or just to us, and not necessarily taking it off the shelf or copying that person or that person. So just making sure that we're doing things that are working for us. So I think that's a really good call out. So thank you so much, Sally, for clarifying that. For sure, it's transforming me, and I'm sure it's doing the same for our listeners today on our podcast. So, dear ladies, please remember that menopause is a natural part of our lives. But with the right nutrition and lifestyle adjustments, believe that we can navigate it confidently. So, once again, thank you for tuning in to our podcast episode for today. I hope it has been extremely helpful. Don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends, your sisters, your daughters, even your husbands and fathers. I think the more they understand the biological progression, the better they get to be able to understand our moods and what we're going through, and maybe the better our relationships as well with family. So do please keep listening to the Help We Need podcast. Stay tuned in for more episodes on living your best lives. Until next time, stay empowered and remember to empower her.